Hello there, we've not met yet. I'm Greg Gomez, here to present a special Igniting Change podcast. We're breaking the mold a little bit with a remix episode featuring some of our fellow Cubies. In these episodes, our incredibly talented team will dive into the latest in tech topics and industry news, from groundbreaking innovations in AI to the newest trends in app development and digital transformation. We're here to cut through the cyber noise, serve up a hot take, and keep you entertained along the way. Whether you're a tech enthusiast or just curious about what's shaping the future, these episodes are packed with insights that you won't want to miss. So sit back, stay curious, and let's ignite change together.
Hello there, and welcome to the first ever Free-Sided Cube Fed and Bed Developers Only podcast. It's a takeover. So, thanks for the intro, Tom. My name's Kev, and I lead the front-end team at Free-Sided Cube. I've been here for quite a while. I think it's like 8 years. It's absolutely flown by. I'm into pandas, jazzy shirts, although I clearly forgot about a jazzy shirt today. I don't know if mustard's jazzy or not. I don't think it is.
10 out of 10 jazzy.
Nice. It's got a little bit of colour. It's got a little bit of pop. And I'm also into building sweet websites.
That is the truth. I can now use this.
Hello there.
My name's Tom, and this is the first time I've ever heard or seen a soundboard, so clearly I'm going to overuse the soundboard in this podcast. So I'm Tom. I've been here slightly less than 8 years. I think it's closer to 4. My Cube experience is I'm heading up the back-end team. I'm really into shipping rock-solid APIs so that the Fed team can do their job, and I'm also really into being allergic to gluten. It's been a hobby of mine for about 3 years now, and I think I've got it nailed.
Tom, I need to interject. You left and you came back. We need to point that out.
I did. Well, I didn't want to tell the world I was a massive traitor. I've got 4 years spread across 2 employment things.
Well, you left because you were like, I need to go get other experience. And you came back and you were like, I love it here so much.
I could never leave. Stronger, bigger. I'm like Iron Man V2.
Yeah.
I always take that. I'm Robbie, and I've come back to take that to, sow the love. In many ways, I am like Robbie. Yeah.
Return of the Tom.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we need to talk about Fed and Bed. For anyone listening, Fed and Bed, I don't think these are terms we made up. I think they are industry standard. Fed being front-end developer, Bed being back-end developer. But we use Fed and Bed so much because it's way quicker to say. Of course it is. Yeah. And so Fed and Bed throughout this podcast, you now know what they mean. We are both Beds and Feds.
Yes, the Beds and Feds of Cube. So actually, when we're talking about Fed, front end, at Free-Sided Cube, we're mostly talking about websites, even though what we're going to talk about today, there's probably a lot of crossover with mobile application development as well. We have a whole other department for mobile shenanigans, and maybe we can drive them into another podcast at some point in the future.
We call them MOB,
exactly.
MOB.
Exactly. And our job, regardless if it's mobile or websites anyway, is to execute that creative vision we have had set out in front of us. But working with our lovely Bed team here, headed up by Tom, to make that happen from a technical perspective.
So the Bed team, what is Bed? Well, we know the acronym means, and we're all about acronyms here at Cube. Why say something long when you can say short? Much easier. So at Cube, when we say Bed, we mean the back-end team, and we primarily build APIs. We don't really do much full stack stuff because we've got a lovely Fed team doing all that wonderful interaction, UI, UX, design, making it look pretty stuff. We just do low level, behind the scenes, JSON, databases, all the boring stuff that no one cares about until it explodes, and then everyone cares quite a lot.
It's worth pointing out that we've got a whole creative team that make things look amazing as well. So
big time, yeah.
We're still kicking the creative pass down the can.
We're not allowed anywhere near the crayons.
No, we're not allowed near the crayons. But that's rightly so, because we've got some really talented people who know what they're doing around that stuff. But yes, anyway, I wanted to point out, have you noticed around the office that people think we have a bit of a bromance going on? Insert bromance pictures around here.
Yeah, all the memes, photos, that way, all that way. I've noticed it, yeah, and they've got good cause to notice it because we have.
Yeah, we do. But not only do I think we do actually have a great romance, I think it's because we've shown how well Fed and Bed can work together.
Synergy.
It might also be that Slack GIF we have whenever someone mentions Fed and Bed. It's the GIF, and if we can find it, we'll put it in on the bottom here somewhere. Of the two guys.
Do something cool.
I think one of them's Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he goes like they're both going in like like that. It's a
Modelled
good
after our arms, I think, is important to note.
slide in the GIF here. But yeah, so yeah, we've got that synergy and we work well together. But that's because we've been through some stuff. We've come out the other side of it, and we've figured out a few things, a few tricks of the trade, a few tools that work really well to like build out stuff pretty quickly. And we've got a bit of a term we're going to throw at you. It's called RAD energy, and I'll let Tom explain what RAD
RAD.
is.
RAD. We're not talking about Kev's shirts, although they are also rad. We're talking about RAD. More acronyms, please. We need RAD, Rapid Application Development. Sometimes also called RAB. That's with a B. I don't really know what the B stands for. It may not surprise you to know that we have been straight on Wikipedia because although despite we throw the word RAD around a lot, I don't actually know much about RAD itself. My brain went straight to the Visual Basic 6 drag and drop UI Windows RAD tooling of the late 90s, and that is part of RAD, but it goes back further. RAD is a 70s/80s methodology. I think it started off more as a methodology thing, and that then bled into RAD in the 90s of the RAD software. So these will be your Visual Basic 6, something called FileMaker, I think counts as RAD. Any of you Mac dudes out there who were Macking back in the day, FileMaker, technically a 4th generation language, I think that's probably RAD. You can ship stuff quickly, you can build it, it's self-contained, it's kind of simple, but it still works. And so I think Cube's approach to RAD is that we embrace RAD probably 60% as a mindset thing, 40% as a tooling, because we're an agency, we got to ship high quality, on time, fast, and we got to do a great job. So RAD is perfect for us. We are rapid application developers.
So yeah, so Tom obviously gave you the true to the form definition of what RAD is, and we'll get into it later, but he is Captain Terminology. We'll explain all about that. But in my head, I'm thinking of it all just how do we build shit quickly whilst maintaining that quality? So it's important that we work well together, basically, and working well together means that we can complete a bit of that RAD energy. We're working well together. We've got that synergy, and
all
when
the
it doesn't,
corporate speak. We got synergy. We got what other things we got? We got marketing bullshit bingo. We've got
yeah. We should have done a bingo card for this. I think it would have very ticked a few.
We're going to synergize. We're going to circle round. We're going to put a pin in it. We're going to think outside the box, but we're also working inside the box because that's important too.
Exactly, and when it doesn't work well, when we're not talking together, when we're not having that not bromance, but when we aren't communicating, things slow down because we're not explaining the process, we're not talking about technical decisions. We've got a few topics, a few things that might kind of help you
save the day, savior. We're gonna turn it from this into some change in there. Don't forget the coppers.
I love it. So Tom, should we jump into topic 1?
Let's do it. We're gonna do topic 1: terminology and scheming. This is not planning to overthrow your Fed and Bed teams. This is about we call it a schema meeting at Cube. I think we're visionaries, pioneers, probably in that department.
Totally. It's definitely something that I've not experienced in other places, but it's something we've kind of recently adopted to kind of, I guess, ground ourselves on a solid foundation, to which we build our tower of software.
I completely agree. Going in blind and rigid doesn't really work for anyone. You got to be flexible, but also you got to do planning because going in with no plan is just as bad as going in with a ridiculously rigid plan. You got to strike that balance. Dare I get into the whole agile waterfall drama, but I think there's something to be said there about being somewhat flexible.
Yeah, and definitely. And there's the old-fashioned saying, months of dev time can save days of planning. Or is it the other way around?
I don't know. I think that's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek one. Yeah, like why bother doing like a couple of days of planning? You can just burn through devs for like 6 months. That's really cool. No, of course, you want to do your planning up front. You got to get your terminology right, and I think that's what this section is about. Is terminology is really important because if you're not all speaking the same language, how can you work as a team? Because you can have conversations where you spend the first half an hour of the conversation just figuring out what each other person in the group is talking about, and then that's probably just internally. You got the client, throwing their crazy terminology in as well, because they're in the business of doing the thing that you're trying to build. You're a newcomer to this. How can you know all their 20 years of experience? But you still got to know the words and build the things. So schema meetings, really important. I think this boils down to, for me, a noun, adjective, verb exercise. After you've nattered with your client and you figured out all the requirements, however you want to capture that, probably user stories. That's a good place to start. I think using the nouns probably helps you roughly figure out your models. Your verbs are the doy things, so like your API actions, like manage something. Manage is an awful example. Archive something, create something. Those are the verbs, and those will probably start helping you flesh out a list of your endpoints. But it's really important that as a bed team, you do this with your Fed team, because they'll let you know straight away whether you're quite simple scrud endpoints. I'm throwing an extra S in there because there's a search. CRUD is cool, but scrud is where it's at because you've got the extra S for search. They'll let you know whether that actually works or not, because it's not always as simple as just firing off an Ajax call to an endpoint. There's Fed considerations, and you've got to love your Fed team.
And just getting those things, it sounds so simple when you've just gone through the exercise of like just figuring out terminology, but it really does save your bacon a bit further down the line. And I just remember a wild project I was involved with a long time ago. Tom may have been there,
Maybe.
where ourselves, the different teams, and the client, we basically swallowed a whole thesaurus, and that had gone unchecked for quite a while, and we were all and we'd all got unchecked on it, and it really escalated, and we only really figured out near the end of the project. We're having these Slack threads of about 50 messages long, just trying to talk about what the hell we're talking about. It will be someone mixing up, like it'll be like, I don't know, reports and templates or something, and they're reusing them interchangeably, and then Fed have got it defined in our code base as one thing, Fed have got it defined in their code base as another thing, and then the client's got it defined as another thing, and then the PMs and the POs have got it defined as another thing, and then there's this carnage on, okay, what are we actually talking about and what are we trying to solve? And it might just be something really simple, but that adds so much complexity if we're not using the right words. And out the back of that crazy project, I believe Captain Terminology was born. So I put in a little Slack auto response every time someone added. I think it was, if they wrote Captain Terminology, or it might be the other way around, it just pinged Tom. It was amazing.
It was brilliant. All joking aside, it hammered the point home that your terminology is really important, and if you get that wrong, your project's not doomed, but it's a real uphill battle. It's a full-on, whenever you're trying to talk to the client, because they don't know what you're talking about and you don't know what they're talking about, and everyone gets a bit grouchy. And actually, clear comms, I think, is probably most of the battle in building something quickly, which is agency life.
Sure. And that's just like part one of a schema meeting, just grounding ourselves in some solid terminology. Like after that, it's like, great, now we can have the discussion about how we're going to build, say, entity relationship diagrams and database structures, and talk about what endpoints we're going to have. And typically what we'll do with those is we'll just go through the designs and just look at each page and go, right, okay, what's on this page? What's the user putting in? What are we displaying back to them? What actions are we doing? And we'll go through those, like those nouns, adjectives, and verbs to kind of figure all that out. And then we are then basically all on the same page, and we can pass this almost like a living, breathing document around.
We've got a single source of truth, though. That's the main thing. There's one source of truth, and everyone's on board.
Yes, we can talk. Oh my God, sources of truth. We can. That's definitely. I reckon we should do another podcast on sources of truth.
Podcast 2.
Yeah, podcast 2 is sources of truth. It's a very interesting topic, and I'm sure we can go off on a massive tangent on it. Want to go off on a tangent for 2 minutes?
We can do it. Let's dive in. This is our podcast. we call the shots.
All right. Well, what we'll do is we'll tease the next episode with it, and then
Okay.
I don't know if we can put like a little box in the corner once we've done it. We'll go click here to maybe do it at the end.
Like and subscribe. Yeah. Give us your credit card details, all that business.
But no, yeah, honestly, sources of truth are like, testament to really just knowing where everything is, and making sure that everyone knows where to go and what to, I've got to build a feature. Where's my endpoints that I've got to digest? Where's all of this stuff? And actually, this kind of does feed into our next topic quite handily, I think. Does it feed into our next topic? It feeds into our
I think
topic.
it feeds. Yeah,
I'm jumping the gun. I'm jumping the gun. But yeah, sources of truth. Stay tuned.
It's coming soon, coming at you in a podcasting venue near you. So should we move on to? I feel like we've wrapped up terminology and schema meetings quite well. You've got to have, in summary, you've got to have a good glossary. You've got to get everyone on board using it. You've got to discuss it with your developers, both sides of the coin, and they've got to be happy, and it removes all the surprises from it. And obviously the client's got to be happy too, because it's their projects and they're paying for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So are we going on now to topic number 2? Shall we do
another one?
Let's do
another one. Let's do it.
Topic 2. So topic 2 is, we love emerging technologies at Cube. We are all about trying new stuff, right tool for the right job, experimenting with new trends, and we just love technology because we're a technology company, and there's so many new things coming out that it's really tempting to want to play with all of them all the time. And we do that as well. But I think the point is, with RAD stuff, when we're doing rapid application development, there's definitely a time and place for those emerging technologies and the new shiny stuff that you never touched before. It's not when you've got a tight deadline and a client's relying on you to deliver. So in those cases, I think true RAD is about low risk. How can you ship something to a tight deadline with lots of features that are essential because there's users relying on and so forth? How can you add a fourth crazy pill into that, which is, we're going to choose a new technology. It's going to be a first time on a new tech. I don't think that's a winner. So I think true RAD is low risk. And I don't know about you, Kev, but for me, that probably means leaning on a batteries included. It means leaning on a batteries included boring framework. Boring in air quotes, because boring also means getting the job done and going home on time. If you're PHP, that means probably Laravel or Symfony. If you're Python, you want Django. Spring Boot is for Java. Ruby on Rails, obviously, massively RAD. Probably the original RAD web framework. Anything opinionated that's going to save you bike shedding time. I think that's a real win for RAD, because you just save so much time. You don't need to invent your framework or start from scratch or have a huge discussion about why we do it this way. It's like, the framework's decided for us. We're going to focus on delivering value to the client, shipping features, and doing it in a reliable way that doesn't involve trying to take over the world with a new framework we built ourselves.
And do you know what? What's so interesting as well is, so I've dipped occasionally into the odd Laravel project and our PHP and our occasional Node projects we do as well.
I think you're an honorary bed, Kev. You're part of the gang.
I've dipped in just as pure curiosity, and not to fiddle, I promise. But yeah, it's so easy to read because a lot of the stuff does make sense. I'm not that proficient in SQL queries, so actually just being able to see normal code. Someone's going to go, that's normal code as well, but something.
I know what you mean. Simplifies,
something
isn't it?
that's quickly, easy to read. You've got your models, views, controllers, boom, you can go straight in. It's so nice. It's really nice, and it just, again, a bit of synergy there, because it means I can come in and see what the back end's doing quite easily. And especially if it's like a Node.js project as well, because you've got Nest.js, which is very, we can share some things as well, and it's lovely.
Good. Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think I don't think you should be leaning into each other's code bases to write stuff, but I think keeping an eye on each other's code base is really handy. Having some, as a bed, having some Fed sympathy, I think makes me write better stuff for you guys, because I kind of appreciate the work you're doing, and maybe vice versa.
I love whacking back-end developers in the pull requests as well. Because it's just like,
it's nice, though.
Yeah,
makes us feel appreciated.
Yeah, although I have occasionally had the can you stop adding me to your pull requests?
Not from me.
Not from you.
It makes me feel all. That's how I feel when I get a Kevy B pull request.
I will send you some more then.
Yeah, I think this extends also to your stack, because granted you've got so Fed is probably React or some sort of React framework.
Yeah. So for Fed, it's very simple. It's not like, I try and keep it nice and simple anyway. So we've got if it's very something very small or prototypey, we'll just go with like vanilla React with like Vite or Vite. Some people say Vite. I don't know why.
I think everyone calls it something different.
Yeah, and that's just bare bones simple. We need something quick. If it's something a bit more complicated, so building a nice little marketing website or dashboard admin panel thing, we'll go Next.js. Again, it's almost a bit like a batteries included framework. It's opinionated on how to do stuff. The routing's all there for you. You don't have to worry about that faff of setting up.
But that saves time. That's a really good thing.
It does. And again, like we'll use Tailwind CSS as well. So got a load of utility classes. We don't have to touch CSS. I quite like doing vanilla CSS. But I know a lot of developers are like, I don't want to go near it. And this
Shout out to Bulma. I bloody love Bulma.
love Bulma. I know you love your what are they called? You just drop in the no code CSS frameworks.
Oh man, pull it straight off a CDN. You can tell I'm a true backend developer. Give me like maybe Alpine and a little bit of jQuery or some underscore whack, all these things. One Bulma CSS file straight off CDN, and I'm away. I'm pretending I'm a front end developer. I'm a front end developer with tricycle stabilizer wheels on.
But that stuff works. It works as well because it's tried and tested tooling. So it's all good. And yeah, in terms of we've also got to host all our stuff as well. We'll typically lean on something like simple AWS setup. So S3 CloudFront, Route 53. Or if we're doing like Next.js, we'll even just chuck it on Vercel because that honestly is amazing. You can just chuck it on and it's deployed and built in about like 15 seconds. It's crazy.
I love that. I've got a lot of time for things. Is Netlify another one? You're a big Netlify fan?
Netlify's another one. We're not being sponsored by any.
Yeah, this podcast is sponsored by Netlify. Send us free swag. We need all your free stuff.
If you are listening and want to sponsor us, please do.
We also like money. Just send us money. That'll work.
Give us money. I love it.
But I think you're right there because a simple stack, because obviously simple framework's one thing, but if you're deploying it to some archaic infrastructure where your environments aren't the same or everything's complicated or deployment is like being kicked in the nuts every time, that's not rad. You're going to slow down. So I think if choosing a batteries included framework is part one, choosing a boring, and I'm using boring in air quotes, boring meaning like I get to go home and like watch TV and have a beer rather than swearing at some crazy DevOps problems. Boring stack and boring infrastructures are great because for backend, maybe that's you lean on VMs that are like Ubuntu VMs rather than having a full Kubernetes, containerized thing, because those things have their place, but a small prototypey RAD thing, I don't think you need that.
Kubernetes is expensive as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it ain't cheap.
Yeah.
But if you sponsor this podcast, we'll sing loads of good stuff about Kubernetes. So again, we like money.
Next episode, we love Kubernetes.
Well, Kubernetes is the best RAD tool. Maybe it is. If you're proficient in Kubernetes and you're really good at it, it could be RAD. But I think for us, for smaller back-end projects, I don't think it is, because there's some really, you can take a single VM quite a long way. Yeah. Obviously, assuming you've got like proper adult stuff in the background, like a managed Amazon RDS database with like proper backups and like replicates across regions and like in proper VPCs and that business. If you've just got your framework deployed to a single VM, that can do quite a lot before it falls over. In fact, it can do a lot before it falls over. I think there's this misconception that unless you're launching at Google scale, it's going to fall over. But actually, there's some like quite big projects being hosted on some quite modest hardware, like a couple of gig of RAM, a couple of cores. You can kind of take over the world a bit with that stack.
It was like, wasn't it? Reddit just had like one table for like ages in the database.
Oh, I totally believe it. Yeah.
I expect it's not like that now, but like I think for a very long time it was just like single database with one table in it, and that was it. There was nothing else in it.
Yeah, and like, didn't Instagram scale to like billions of users off only 14 employees? And again, just because they just had stacks of big, well, I think they were hardcore, bare metal servers, but they just had stacks of big VMs in the background running. And I think it's an underrated thing when you're trying to ship something quick, because it's not the perfect stack, but it's a simple one, and simple means quick.
They must have also had that synergy, I reckon.
I think they were Ruby on Rails, Instagram originally, so they would have had lots of lovely gems to do all the work for them.
And like they probably had some good nuggets of like terminology. They're also synced, and like there's something to be said for if you are using similar stacks. I mean, it could be whatever, but if you are just using similar infrastructure for a lot of things, it's so easy for someone else to jump into that project and get on with it. Like the amount of times where, you know, we've onboarded like a new front end developer into an existing project and they've gone, oh, this is exactly like the, you know, it might be contextually different, but they've gone, this is exactly the same way we code, this is exactly the same project structure, doing the same patterns, similar things, and leaning on libraries and tools, so we're not having to reinvent the wheel all the time. And they're like, oh yeah, I can just jump into that, and then it's so much less cognitive overload. There's another podcast we talk about cognitive.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my gosh, you know,
Our brains are tiny and limited, and don't waste them on dumb stuff. Waste them on writing code because
fixing the unique selling point instead of figuring out how to style a button.
So another great thing is as well your deployments. Your deployments should be really simple now. Kev's in a great place when he's using Vercel and Netlify because their one-click deploy mechanism really is one click, and I feel like backend sometimes makes itself more complicated than it needs to be. So you should probably be doing a backend cool one-click deployment too. There's tools like Deploy HQ. You've got loads of Amazon tools where you can sort of like manage Chef and Puppet things where you can click to deploy. Obviously, you've got your pipelines and runners like Bitbucket Pipelines, GitHub Actions. Having things run automatically and having your deployments not be a pain point is a huge one as well. Because if you're constantly iterating and shipping, and you don't want your deployments to be a pain point, and maybe this feeds into environments as well. I think Fed should kind of have their own environment, which is not fiddled with unnecessarily. If Fed are sharing the same environment as test, or Fed have got maybe you've got a private backend environment where you test things with a bit of scale or load or something, you shouldn't be knackering your Fed workflow by changing that. So I think a dedicated Fed environment is the way forward.
100%. And just picking up on your point about, you know, deployments and things like that, controversial shout out, you should you should be confident enough to deploy at 4 p.m. on a Friday.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't, but I agree, you should have the confidence to.
Yeah. You should be able to be like, nah, it's fine, I can deploy on a Friday at 4 p.m.
If anyone at Cube deploys post Friday PM, they get a few of one of those. Yeah, don't deploy on a Friday.
Don't deploy on a Friday. You should be confident enough to deploy on a Friday anyway.
Agreed.
I love it. So we've covered terminology schema meetings. We've covered, just having that reliable infrastructure, that boring infrastructure. Even though we do love bringing in new technologies and trying new things, there's definitely a time and a place for it. But relying on that tried and tested tooling and libraries and frameworks really helps us just ship stuff out quickly and reliable. And I guess moving on to the third topic, there's a really awesome bit of kit that we both use, and it really helps aid that conversation, documentation, interface, chat, I guess.
It's the glue between us.
It's the glue that holds us together, and it's our OpenAPI documentation. Used to be commonly referred to as Swagger documentation. I think probably Swagger's like the brand on top of OpenAPI.
There's some versioning drama there. I think maybe Swagger became OpenAPI v3, but whatever it is, we love all of it. We love all the swaggery OpenAPI-ness out there in the world.
Yeah, but what is it? I hear you ask.
Yeah.
Tom will say.
Shall I say? So OpenAPI, I think we use OpenAPI only because it's newer. I think Swagger is technically v2, whereas OpenAPI is v3. But they're both great. Use whichever one's right for your company. But we like OpenAPI because in your backend repository, you have a file. It can be as simple as literally a .yaml file in your public web directory. And that YAML file, I think it also works for JSON, but I find the YAML much easier to write. There's a YAML file that is an OpenAPI specification schema thing, and in there you describe all of your API endpoints and which HTTP methods each of those endpoints takes, and the parameters, maybe they're query parameters, maybe they're JSON body object expectations. You document those, and you also document what it returns. What this means is every API endpoint in your backend is listed somewhere, but beyond, because you can say, well, why not just use a Word document, like a .txt file? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a cool way of documenting stuff. But the beauty of OpenAPI is because it's documented and it's kind of a schema, you can validate the document. And if you stick to it, there's some really cool tooling that can sort of scoop it up and do magic stuff with it. So as a bed team, we write the OpenAPI schema for our work, and because it's in your repository, it's in version control as well. So you haven't got like this Word document where you've got like, oh, we got like a staging doc and like a test doc and like a production doc, which obviously get out of sync straight away, and no one bothers to update it because we're all too busy shipping features. But if it's in your version control, it's a lot easier to ensure this is up to date, and when it gets deployed, the Fed team can sort of scoop it up. So I guess we author it, and over to Kev for how you guys consume it.
Yeah, so there's two ways we can consume it. So obviously Bed will host it. So they've got their OpenAPI file, YAML file.
Specific to each environment, I think is important.
Specific to each environment. And, that we can then generate documentation beautifully on the web for that. So if I want to just go and find out for particular details for an endpoint, I can go to that documentation URL, find the relevant endpoint, know what I'm gonna put in and get out, and sometimes you can even try it out on some of the renders for OpenAPI documentation.
Yeah, they're really cool. They get like you drop in a JSON web token, and it like does some cool Ajaxy stuff, and you can actually test shit in real time. Fully behind that. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, and what's even better, what's even great, and I love that you guys do it as well, is they will finish a bit of work. Say they finish work on an endpoint, they'll put it in their ticket and link to the documentation to that specific endpoint. So I don't have to go and be like, "Hey, dude, what was the endpoint and what do I need to give it? Can you give me some examples of how to use it?" They're like, "Boom, here it is."
Check out the docs.
Yeah. So that's really nice, and I think that's really great. And on top of that, there's great tools for...
You mean it gets better, Kev? There's more?
Oh my god. There's some great tooling. Hey, level up. There's some great tooling for just being able to take that YAML and automatically generate API clients off the back of it. So we typically use React Query. So this is a really nice like fetching library for React. So what it'll do is it does all the clever stuff of fetching something, keeping it in local memory, and when you then need it, it will decide if that data is probably invalid or not, and then decides to refetch it. So it's a nice little. It generates basically hooks and things, and it then allows us some kind of performance gain as well, because we're not necessarily refetching the same data that's probably not changed all the time. And what's great about that is it works really well with this tool called OpenAPI Code Gen. So you can go into Google and search for that. And that's ideal. What it does is it takes that YAML file and it generates all of the code that needs to go into React Query. And we then have all these nice hooks and helper functions and utilities to execute endpoints on the back end.
And that's definitely rad. That is real, true rapid application. Spinning up code, literally writing code for you.
Yeah, it's writing code for me, and it speeds us up so much because we don't have to sit there and copy and paste build our own API client. We don't have to build our own fetchers, mutators, build our own hooks that sit around it, or integrate it with React Query. It's just done.
Because humans get those things wrong. We balls it up all the time. So from a specification, because then if it goes wrong, you can go and like bonk us. I got a bonk sound effect. I feel like I should have a bonk. That's a Fed bonking a bed. Scratch that. That's a Fed hitting a bed over that. They haven't updated the OpenAPI schema, and so that's entirely on us. So that's where the bed Fed love. We got to respect our beds and say if we're not providing you with a good OpenAPI spec, we're the ones at fault here.
And that's coming full circle then back to the original schema meeting about having that conversation early on, so we didn't have to keep pestering you and go, "Can you update this? Can you do this? Can you update that?" And because we've had that initial conversation, it means those types of interactions are limited, and it means we can just spend more time loving each other, which is great.
Yeah, and shipping stuff too. We do occasionally ship stuff.
So that tool's really nice. It saves our bacon quite a lot. It means we can then focus on all the good stuff instead of trying to reinvent the wheel every single time. And you may have noticed we've had a bit of a running theme around not reinventing the wheel, shipping stuff quickly, saving ourselves the pain of development. Because I kind of think, I guess I guess in my head, the kind of be all and end all about all of these tools is that they appeal to developers' potentially lazy nature. It's like it's doing all the boring stuff that we don't want to do, all the kind of cumbersome stuff, and it's working smarter as well.
I'm with you on that, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
Being a little bit lazy as a developer, I think, is a good thing because, like you say, it makes you use things already there, and you can kind of lean on trusted technologies, and you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Reinventing the wheel is really cool and fun sometimes, and it's a great thing to do for learning and experimentation.
totally.
You just don't do it when the client's got a tight deadline and you're the person saving the day. That's the time to lean on your most boring tool, not your cool reinvented one.
You don't want to build Homer Simpson's car when it's like something super important, basically.
Yeah,
If
yeah, like
anyone
those
gets that
memes.
reference, yeah.
The client
Maybe you can
wanted
get that in as well. We'll slide that in.
what the client wanted versus what they got.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I guess like there's going to be more out of the back of this conversation, I'm sure, because we could probably do about 100 topics on this, which will probably be a third podcast after we talked about our source of truth.
Backed by popular demand. I want to say that.
It depends if you guys like it. If you subscribe and like to this podcast, we'll definitely get dragged in to do some more.
And if we get a sponsor, so be it.
Not dragged in because we actually really enjoy doing this anyway. But we'll come back and give you some more tasty tidbits.
Well, can I throw in a bonus number 4 quickly before we run away?
Oh, go for it. Yeah, you got a bonus number 4. Go on.
I got bonus number 4. No charge for this one, fans. Like and subscribe for this. So I'm going to throw in number 4, which is back-end automated testing.
Oh yeah.
I feel like this is an easy win when you're doing. Well, is it an easy win? It's a great win once you've got it in place. Is it easy to like set up and run with? Some people say like, I got no time for automated testing. It's really slow. Who's got the brain power to write unit tests when you're developing something rapidly? And I can kind of subscribe to that. But I think a few choice automated tests can really save your bacon, because if you're moving quickly, you might also accidentally be breaking things quickly. So having a suite of automated tests backing up, so when you do that crazy 5 p.m. deployment, which you're definitely not supposed to do on a Friday, at least you're kind of leaning on your test suite because you are comfortable that you've at least not bodged the auth. People can still kind of log in, and at least your Fed isn't going to come running at you and kind of headbutt you.
You do that all the time.
They're also trying to deploy something at 5:05. So my bang for buck goes for everyone calls different testing stuff, but I think integration / feature testing is your most bang for buck when it comes to testing APIs, because you can kind of simulate HTTP requests locally, get them to run a mock request against your application. You've probably got like a separate database for testing stuff, which you've probably seeded with some sort of test data, and then your tests can like check, can I make an HTTP request and get like a JWT back or a session token back or something? And granted, they're not the be all and end all, but like they're pretty easy to write in most frameworks. Like Laravel, I'm a massive PHP fanboy, but Laravel's got some really cool automated testing stuff. I know Ruby on Rails has got it too. It might be an external gem, but automated testing, if you write them as you go, is really like an extra 5-10 minutes worth of work, and they will save your bacon one day. So that's Tom's bonus number 4.
Number 4. I'm 100% with you on the automated testing, and trying to do as much as possible without obviously killing your time, because you can write as many tests as you want. I think knowing where and when to write the tests, like you say, is the best thing to do. But I know typically on the front end we'll go, right, okay, we've built something extremely naughty here, let's definitely get some tests around it, make sure it's not naughty, but it's complicated, but complicated in a good way, because it is doing something different and unique and something that we've never had to redo before. We definitely want to put some tests around it. Like, for instance, we're not going to put a test around a button because we know a button works, but we'll put tests around like some of the complicated stuff. It's easy to write tests on. If you write our code in a sensible manner, in a reusable modular fashion, it's so easy to test as well. Like, a lot of people look at front end stuff and go, "Oh, I don't know how I'm going to test a front end thing."
It is tricky. I think Bed's got a way easier task there doing back end testing. I do sympathise with that.
But there's some really good tooling to help us like build stuff quickly, like test stuff quickly as well. So there's a really good framework called, I think it's called Testing Library. I think it's literally called testing-library.com.
The most imaginative name.
I know, but they've done libraries for each like popular front-end frameworks like React, jQuery. I think they might have vanilla ones as well. But what it does is it sits on top of Jest, and it allows you to really easily interact with elements on the screen. So it'll render your thing in isolation, and then you can interact with that thing and then expect the output. So it'd be like, on submission of this form, wait for the form to submit, and then wait for a success bit of text to pop up, and then assert that that's true, and then you've done it, and then you can mock your endpoints and stuff with it as well, using Jest, and so yeah, it's so much to it, and it's so easy to do. I think it's again like getting in the habit of it. I think once you're in the habit of writing tests, is actually I find it quite enjoyable once you're doing it.
Yeah, definitely the safety of knowing they're there to save you is I can rest easy.
It's definitely a controversial topic, though. I think I've definitely seen a lot of people going, nah, don't bother writing tests. A lot of people going, no, you should 100% write tests. I'm definitely in the camp of writing tests, I think, personally.
Same. I think you should write tests, but I think there's a balance. Some people want to test every single aspect of an application to the death, and that's insane because you don't need to test like your ORM. It's already, if you're using, presumably you're using a mature ORM, you don't need to test your ORM, save stuff to the database. That's crazy. The ORM has probably got their own test suite, but like you said, some naughty bit of logic, that's definitely worth a couple of feature tests around it just to make sure it doesn't fall over when you inevitably make it fall over.
100%. I like that. Yeah, nice.
So is this us wrapping up now? Are we doing an outro?
Yeah, let's jump in. Let's jump into an outro. We've
jumping out.
Yeah, we've talked a lot and we've gone through a few different things. So I guess
that may have been useful. People might enjoy this.
maybe let's do a TLDR, and this will be the little caption at the bottom of the social media post.
Nice, yeah, okay.
Yeah, too long didn't read. I guess it's too long didn't listen. Or too long
TLDL.
Or too long didn't listen watch.
No, I think you're right. It's TLDL. We're pioneering. Not only are we pioneering in the mobile app development space, we're pioneering in podcasting as well. Just taking them off, baby. We're just smashing them out of the park.
Yeah, I love it. So I guess in my head, it's utilizing tools, communication, and something else.
Shall I do the something else?
Yeah, you do the something else.
So for me, I think we can summarize this podcast by saying your Fed and Bed must have excellent synergy if you want them to succeed.
Yes.
And if you are an agency and shipping stuff, or to fair, just any business shipping stuff, you probably want to embrace some aspects of RAD, rapid application development, because we're all running out of time and it ain't cheap. So RAD is probably the way forward for most things. So if you want to do RAD, you should have a kind of boring framework, a kind of boring stack, some amazing terminology, lots of sort of terminology discussions and schemas and checking and nouns and verbs. And then you need to hammer out the features, probably backing yourself up with some tests. And OpenAPI is probably going to support you most of the way there. This podcast is sponsored by OpenAPI. You should probably have OpenAPI backing you up. And if you do all of that, your project stands a really good chance of success.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said. So yeah, good stuff. Tom, give us one for the road. Give us your favorite soundbite.
We give this. I think this is where the posts are going to fade out for us. This is the dancing out we go. Tune in next time, Tom and Kev.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yes, yes.